She paid the tuition every semester. But at graduation they thanked someone else. My name is Margaret Louise Anderson. I am 73 years old. For 35 years. I worked as a bookkeeper at a small manufacturing company in Ohio. Numbers were my specialty. Balancing accounts. Tracking quiet transactions. I suppose that's why no one noticed. The most important payments I ever made. The first envelope. It started the year my grandson Ethan received his college acceptance letter. Harvard wasn't in the picture. Neither was Yale. But to us Ohio State University felt just as big. His parents, my son David and his wife Claire, were proud. Nervous too. Tuition wasn't small. Neither were their debts. I saw the numbers before they did. Because David asked me to look over the financial aid package. I did. And I saw the gap. A gap large enough to break a dream. The decision I made alone. I had savings. Nothing extravagant. Just decades of careful living. Brown bag lunches. Modest vacations. An old car that still ran. I went home that night. And opened my retirement folder. There was enough. Not to live luxuriously. But enough to cover Ethan's tuition quietly. The first payment. I didn't write a check to my son. I paid the university directly. Anonymous donor. Semester 1 covered. When Ethan called shouting, "Grandma, I got more financial aid than expected." I smiled. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." His parents celebrated. They said we worked so hard to make this happen. And they had. Just not alone. Why I stayed silent. It wasn't about pride. It wasn't about credit. It was about freedom. If they knew, they would feel indebted. If Ethan knew, he would feel pressure. I didn't want gratitude. I wanted him to study without weight on his shoulders. The 4 years. Every semester I paid. Quietly. Consistently. Books. Housing adjustments. Unexpected lab fees. I watched my savings shrink. But I also watched Ethan grow. Internships. Dean's List. Confidence blooming like spring. He'd call sometimes and say, "Dad always says he'll do whatever it takes for me." I would nod into the phone. That's what fathers do. The graduation ceremony. 4 years passed faster than expected. The stadium was full. Caps in the air. Families crying. When Ethan walked across the stage, I clapped the loudest. Afterward, during photos, a professor asked him, "Who supported you the most?" Ethan wrapped his arm around his parents. "My mom and dad," he said proudly. "They sacrificed everything for me." They smiled. So did I. The moment that stung slightly. I would be lying if I said it didn't hurt. Just a little. Not because I needed applause. But because invisibility has weight. Still. Pain fades quickly. When love is real. The private conversation. Later that evening. Claire hugged me tightly. "We couldn't have done this without your emotional support, Mom." Emotional support. I nodded gently. "You did a great job raising him." Which was true. Generosity doesn't erase their effort. It just filled the gaps they couldn't see. The account that ran dry. By the time Ethan graduated, my retirement account looked different. Smaller. Simpler. I postponed replacing the roof. Delayed medical procedures. Cut back on comforts. But when I looked at him, degree in hand, it felt like compound interest of the heart. What no one knew. I kept every receipt in a small box. Not for proof. Just to remember. Because sometimes you need quiet reminders. That your life made impact. Even if no one clapped for it. Grandma secretly funded her grandson's education. The parents took credit. She never corrected them. Not because she was weak. But because love doesn't demand recognition. It simply gives. Sometimes gratitude finds the wrong address. And sometimes the truth waits quietly in a filing cabinet. The new job. After graduation, Ethan moved to Chicago. First apartment. First real job. First paycheck with taxes that made him gasp. He called me often. "Grandma, you always said numbers tell stories. Mine are finally starting to make sense." I smiled. Numbers had always told my story too. He just never knew it. The loan statement. 6 months into his job, Ethan called his parents to ask about his student loans. "How much do I owe again?" he asked casually. There was a pause. David cleared his throat. "Well, we handled most of it." Claire added quickly, "You're lucky, sweetheart. We worked overtime for years." Ethan thanked them. But something didn't sit right. Because he had access to his student portal. And there were no major loans listed. Just small federal ones. The rest paid. Fully. On time. Every semester. The first question. That weekend Ethan visited me unexpectedly. He sat at my kitchen table staring at his laptop. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course." He turned the screen toward me. "These payments. They weren't loans. They were direct transfers." I felt my heart slow. He continued. "And they were consistent. Exact amounts. No missed deadlines. I said nothing. The accountant in him. Ethan had inherited my love for numbers. He zoomed in on the payment records. Anonymous donor, he read softly. Then he looked at me. Not accusing. Just curious. You wouldn't know anything about this, would you? I laughed gently. I'm retired, remember, I barely know how to use that website. Half true. The suspicion grows. Weeks passed. But Ethan couldn't shake it. His parents' income at the time had been modest. Mortgage. Car payments. Medical bills. He started calculating backward. The math didn't support their claim. The receipt box. One afternoon while helping me clean the attic, Ethan found a small wooden box. Inside were receipts. University payment confirmations. Semester after semester. His name printed clearly. The room went silent. The confrontation that wasn't. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just sat down slowly. You did this, he whispered. I looked at him for a long moment. And then I nodded. The question that broke me. Why didn't you tell me? Not angry. Just hurt. Because gratitude had been misplaced. I reached for his hand. Because I didn't want your education to feel like a burden. You're my grandmother, he said. Not a scholarship fund. And you're my grandson, I replied softly. Not my investment. The hard truth. He asked if his parents knew. I shook my head. I paid the university directly. They assumed financial aid covered the difference. That's not fair, he said. Fair. Such a small word for something so complicated. The temptation to reveal. He wanted to tell them. Clear the air. Give me credit. Restore accuracy. But I stopped him. Don't. Grandma. They believed they were giving you everything they could. Let them keep that. But you sacrificed your retirement. I sacrificed nothing, I said firmly. I chose the quiet agreement. After hours of talking, Ethan made a promise. He wouldn't expose it. But he would honor it. Not with public gratitude. With action. The shift. From that day on, Ethan called more often. Visited more frequently. He started a small investment account. Not for himself. But labeled future. He told me it was for something important. He didn't elaborate. I didn't ask. Grandma secretly funded her grandson's education. The parents took credit. She never corrected them. And now, the only person who knew the truth was the one who mattered most. They thanked the wrong people. And she let them. By the time I understood everything, she was already gone. My name is Emily Harper. I'm 29 years old and I work as a registered nurse at a children's hospital in Chicago. I save lives for a living, but the woman who saved mine never asked for recognition. Her name was Margaret Maggie Sullivan. And this is the part of her story no one knew until it was too late. Grandma's funeral was quiet. Not because she wasn't loved, but because she had lived softly. No dramatic scandals. No loud opinions. No demands for applause. Just steady love. The church in our small Illinois town filled with neighbors she had helped. Over the years, meals delivered, rides given. Bills quietly covered. Stories floated around the room like warm light. But no one, absolutely no one, mentioned my education. Because no one knew. My parents stood near the front receiving condolences. We're so proud of Emily, my father said to anyone who would listen. We worked hard to make sure she went to the best schools. My mother nodded. Every sacrifice was worth it. I stood a few feet away. Silent. The way Grandma had always been. After the burial, the lawyer asked our immediate family to stay behind for the reading of her will. There wasn't much money. We all knew that. Grandma had worked as a seamstress most of her life and later cleaned offices part-time. She lived in the same small house for 40 years. Her car was older than I was. Simple. Modest. Ordinary. Or so we thought. The lawyer, Mr. Daniels, adjusted his glasses. Margaret Sullivan left specific personal letters for each family member, he said. And one document that she requested be opened in the presence of her granddaughter, Emily Harper. My parents glanced at me. I felt something twist in my stomach. Mr. Daniels handed me a sealed envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. And a bank statement. My dearest Emily. If you are reading this, it means I've already left this world. I'm proud of you, not because you became a nurse, but because you became kind. There is something I never told you. I paid for your education. Every semester. Every book. Every exam fee. I asked the bank to send the statements to a private mailbox so no one would see. I didn't want credit. I wanted you free. Your parents love you in the way they know how. Let them keep their pride. I never needed it. Success tastes sweeter when no one expects applause. Promise me one thing: never embarrass someone just to prove you were right. Love, Grandma. The room felt smaller. Hotter. My mother frowned. What is it? I couldn't speak. Mr. Daniels cleared his throat. There's more, he said gently. He opened another folder. For the past 10 years, Margaret transferred funds from her savings account directly to St. Catherine's University under Emily's student ID number. He slid the papers across the table. Every tuition payment. Every semester. Her name. Her signature. Her money. My father's face drained of color. That can't be right, he muttered. But it was. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Uncomfortable. And revealing. I remembered every time my parents complained about expenses. Every time they told relatives how much they had invested in my future. All those dinner table speeches. All that credit. It had never been theirs. Grandma had been sewing late at night while I studied anatomy. She had been cleaning office floors while I practiced inserting 4 lines. She carried the burden quietly. So I could walk freely. My mother's voice broke the silence. Why would she lie, she whispered. She didn't, I said softly. She just didn't correct you. There's a difference. For a moment, anger flared inside me. I wanted to confront them. To ask why they took praise so easily. To demand acknowledgement. But then I remembered Grandma's last line. Never embarrass someone just to prove you were right. That was her dignity. Not weakness. Choice. We left the lawyer's office without drama. No shouting. No accusations. Just quiet. That night my parents came to my apartment. They didn't bring excuses. They brought truth. We didn't know, my father said. Grandma told us she had helped a little, my mother added. We assumed we were still covering most of it. They looked smaller somehow. Human. Flawed. Ashamed. And I understood something Grandma had known all along. People don't always lie maliciously. Sometimes they lie to protect their own sense of worth. I know, I said. And I meant it. Because holding on to anger would dishonor her sacrifice. A week later I visited Grandma's house alone. The room still smelled like lavender and old books. In her sewing drawer I found something else. A small notebook. Inside were handwritten notes, every tuition payment recorded carefully. Beside each one a simple sentence. Emily future healer. Emily second semester. Emily nursing exams. Emily graduation soon. No bitterness. No complaints. Just pride. I cried on that old kitchen floor. Not because she had paid. But because she had never needed to say she did. That kind of love is rare. It doesn't shout. It doesn't correct. It doesn't demand applause. It simply gives. Months later the hospital, where I worked, launched a scholarship program for underprivileged students entering nursing school. They asked staff if anyone wanted to sponsor a student. I didn't hesitate. I set up an anonymous fund. Not in my name. In hers. The Margaret Sullivan Quiet Grant. No announcement. No plaque. Just help. When the first student received it, she wrote a thank you note addressed to the anonymous donor. I smiled. Because somewhere I imagined Grandma smiling too. My parents never publicly corrected their past claims. And I never exposed them. But something shifted. They began volunteering. Donating quietly. Changing not from shame but from example. Grandma's silence taught more than confrontation ever could. On the first anniversary of her passing, we gathered again at her grave. No speeches. Just flowers. My father cleared his throat. We're proud of you, Emily, he said softly. This time there was no ownership in his voice. Just love. And maybe a little humility. That was enough. Grandma once told me something when I was 12. We were baking apple pie and I had burned the crust. I was frustrated. It's not fair, I had said. I did everything right. She smiled. Fair isn't always loud, she replied. Sometimes it's quiet. And sometimes it takes time. She was right. Her fairness came in the form of opportunity. And time revealed it. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt unseen. If you've ever given without recognition. If you've ever stayed silent to protect someone's dignity. Know this. Quiet generosity echoes longer than applause. My grandmother didn't correct the story. She rewrote the future. Mine. And now hopefully someone else's. Because love doesn't always need credit. Sometimes it just needs courage. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because some stories deserve to be heard, especially the quiet ones.